Hello and welcome to part 3 of lesson 5. This session is about the location directive. The location directives are used to direct the work to a specific warehouse location. So using the location directives, you can specify where to pick and where to put the items for the different warehouse process. You can define several location directive rules for the same warehouse as per the warehouse layout and the material handling process in the warehouse. So you can define location directive rules to direct the warehouse workers to put the heavy products in the first floor in the warehouse. Or for example, you can specify location zone for the fresh products or the items that require the specific storage conditions like the temperature. Now let's see how to manage and define the location directives. So the location directives found in warehouse management module set up the location directives. When you define a new location directive, so first you should select a work order type. Each work order type manages a specific warehouse flow. In this session, we'll focus on the sales order and the purchase order flow, where the configuration of the rest will be covered in the warehouse management process course. In order to define a new location directive rule for the sales orders, click New and then give it a name. After that, you should specify and review the sequence number of this rule. The sequence number determines the position of the location directive rule, while the system is evaluating the location directives until the edit query criteria is met. So if you have several location directives for the same warehouse, you should set the one that has the specific condition on top of the list, then the generic one. You can also use the options of move up and move down to rearrange the sequence of the location directive rules. Definitely the location directives that have the lower sequence will be applied first when the filter criteria is met. There are 3 tabs that manage the functionality of the location directives. The first one is the Location Directives tab, where you can specify the applicable site and warehouse of each rule. Then, in the Lines tab, you can specify the quantity range of this rule. So this rule can handle quantity from 1 to 1000 eaches. Then, in the Location Directive Actions, you can specify the targeted location of this rule. So here you can define where to pick or to put the items. Now let's review the available options one by one. So the first option is the work type. Here you should select pick or put as per the work order type. For such work order type like the sales order, I created several location directive rules for warehouse 80. So the first rule is warehouse 80 pick that will be used to pick the items either from the bulk location or the picking locations or any other location that have available on hand. Then, as per the business process, the items could be placed in a staging location or it could be moved directly to the bay door location. So I created another 2 location directive rules with work type put. The first one that will be used to put the items into staging location, and the second one that will be used to put the items into the bay door location. When you define location directive rules of both actions, you should also specify the directive code of each location directive rules. So the directive code is used to link the location directives to the work templates. Now let's navigate to the work templates and see how to link the location directives to the work templates. So here this is work template of Warehouse 80 online stores, and we have here 4 steps. The first one, to pick the items from the picking locations and then to put the items into the stage location. So I selected here stage in the directive code, and then we'll pick the items from the stage location, and then finally we'll put the items into the bay door location. So I selected here in this step bay door and the directive code. So while processing the work, the system will use the location directive rule that has the same directive code that's specified here in the work template line. Now let's navigate to the directive codes form to see how to define directive code. So the directive codes found in Warehouse Management module set up them directive codes. In order to define a new directive code, click New and then give it a name and description. When you define the location directive rules, you should specify whether this location directive rule could handle multiple items or only single items. So you should define 2 location directive rules for the put actions. So for this example, I defined 2 put location directive rules to put the items into the bay door location. The first one that has the option of multiple SKU is disabled, and this one will be used to handle the sales orders that have single items. And the second one that has the option of multiple SKU is enabled, and this rule will be used to handle the sales orders that have different items. If you are missing one of the two rules, like for example, you didn't create a location directive rule that has the option of multiple SKU, then if you have a sales order with different items, when you release the sales order to the warehouse, the picking work will be created without put location. Now let's move to the Lines tab where you can direct the warehouse workers to a specific location, either to pick or put the items based on the order quantity. You can define several location directive lines with different quantity range by specifying the applicable from quantity to quantity of each location directive line. Then, each location directive line could be linked to several location directive actions where you can specify the locations that can afford this quantity range. Let's see an example of location directive lines in inbound flow or purchase order put away. So it's required that the full pallets from 1 to 10 pallets to be placed in the bulk locations, where the quantity that less than full pallet from 1 to 19 eaches to be placed directly in the picking locations. Following to this requirement, think about purchase order receiving of 48 LCD arms where one pallet equal 20 eaches. That means this will be received in 2 pallets and 8 eaches. But now the question is, what is the quantity that will be used to evaluate if this quantity is in the range of the location directive line or no? You can determine the quantity that will be used while the system is evaluating the applicable location directive lines by using the locate quantity option. The locate quantity option is used with the inbound operations and when the work type is put. You can select one of the following methods to check whether the quantity is in the range or no. So you can select none or license plate. In that case, the quantity is the quantity being registered on each license plate. The unitized quantity is the quantity that's specified in the inventory transactions. The remaining quantity is the quantity that is yet to be registered. And the expected quantity is the total quantity that's specified on the purchase order line. Now let's go back to the location directives and see how to configure the scenario. So I created two location directive lines. The first one that has the sequence number 1 is applicable for the quantity range from 1 to 10 pallets. And the second one is applicable for the quantity range from 1 to 19 eaches. The unit of measure that's specified here on the location directive lines is used for the quantity evaluation. So while evaluating the location directive lines, the system evaluates the lines in sequence, then will attempt to convert the demand unit to the unit of measure that's specified in the location directive line to determine if this quantity is in the range or no. If the unit of measure conversion is not exist, then it will continue to the next line. While the unit value that's specified here in the unit column is only used to evaluate the quantity and express the unit of measure of the quantity range, you can restrict the location directive line by a specific unit of measure or multiple unit of measures. So only items with that unit of measure can be put in this location. So for example, I'm going to restrict the first location directive line by pallets. So this means this location directive line is only applicable for the full pallet quantity. So I'll click here restrict by unit, save, restrict by unit, and then I'll select here pallet. Then I'll restrict the second location directive line by eaches. So I'll click restrict by unit, save, restrict by unit, and I'll select here each. Just to make it more clear, let's review this demo of our scenario. So I just created this purchase order line of LCD arm where the quantity is 48 eaches. Then I received the entire quantity. Now let's review the created works. So I'll select the purchase order line, click warehouse, then work details. Here we can see the system created 3 works. The first work, this is for full 1 pallet, and the location directive suggested the user to put this pallet in this location. Let's check this location. So this is a bulk location. And the second work, this is also for full 1 pallet, and this should be put in the same bulk location. Where the third work, this is for the remaining 8 eaches, and the location directive suggested the user to put the 8 eaches in this location. So this is a pick location. So the location directives here will suggest or direct the users to put the full ballots into bulk locations where the eaches will be directed to the picking location. In the previous example, the system did create three works since the unit sequence group of this item does not allow license plate grouping on the pallet level. So here we can see the license plate grouping is only enabled on the each level. So this means that each full ballot will have a separate license plate where the remaining eaches will be grouped into one license plate. If I enabled this option on the ballot level, so the system will create one single work for grouped license plate for the whole 48 quantity. I just created another purchase order line where the license plate grouping is enabled on the each level and pallet level. Then I received this purchase order line. Now let's review the created work. So here we can see the system created only one work for a single license plate. Then let's review the put instructions. So here we can see that we should put two ballots into this location. And this is indeed a bulk location where the 8 remaining eaches should be put into this location, which is a pick location. Just to make it more clear, let's review this demo of our scenario and see how the location directive line works. So I created purchase order line of 48 eaches of LCD arms. Then I received the entire quantity. Now let's review the created works. So I'll click warehouse, then work details. And here we can see the system created three works. I would expect that the system will direct the full ballots to bulk locations where the eaches should be directed to a picking location. So let's review the first work. Here in the first work, we can see this is for one full ballot, and this is the put location. Let's review this put location. And indeed, this is a bulk location. And the second work, this is also for full one ballot, and we can see this is the same bulk location, where the remaining 8 eaches will be directed and put in this location. So let's review this location. So this is a pick location. Back again to the location directive to review the rest of the options that are available in the lines tab. The next option is the round up to unit. This option works when the restrict by unit option is enabled and when the work order type is raw material picking. This option is used to round up the required raw material quantity to a multiple of the handling unit that's specified here in the restrict by unit. Let's review this example of the round up to unit with the raw material picking. So this is a formula of orange juice bottle, and in order to produce one bottle, you will need 0.13 kilogram of fructose and one plastic bottle. This is from manufacturing perspective, but from warehousing perspective, the location directive line of the raw material picking could be restricted to full unit of measures like the pallets or the boxes. So when the round up to unit option is enabled, then the required raw material quantity will be rounded up to a multiple of the handling units that's specified in the restrict by unit field. So in our example, the required fructose will be rounded up from 0.13 kilogram to one pallet, and the required plastic bottle will be rounded up from one each to a full box. Indeed, when this option is disabled, then only the required formula quantity will be picked without rounding up. The next option is allow backing quantity. If you specify a backing quantity on the sales, transfer, or production orders, and when this option is enabled, then you can restrict the system to only select the locations that have at least the backing quantity. The next option is one of the significant options, allow split. This option determines whether the required quantity should be fulfilled from only one single location or it could be splitted to be picked from multiple locations. Definitely, when this option is disabled and the quantity cannot be picked from only one location, then the location directive will fail. The last option in the location directive lines is the immediate replenishment template. You can use this option to link the location directive to a replenishment template to replenish the inventory immediately after a location directive line fails to allocate the inventory. Now let's move to the location directive actions where you can specify the pick or put locations for the location directive lines. Each location directive line could be linked to several location directive actions That's why you should pay attention to the sequence number. The sequence number determines the position of each action while the system is evaluating the available location directive actions. The action that has the lowest sequence number will be applied first when the edit query that's specified here is met. In order to create new location directive action, click New and give it a name. Then you should specify the applicable locations of this location directive action. So this action will be used to pick the items from the bulk locations. So I'll click Edit Query, and then here I'll select Location Profile ID equal bulk. You can see here that the system automatically filtered certain fields like the warehouse equal 80, physical inventory greater than 0, and no open quantity equal no. Then you should select in the fixed location usage whether the applicable locations are only the fixed locations that's specified for the product or the product variant, or you can select fixed and non-fixed locations, and in that case, all the locations that meet the criteria specified here in the edit query are applicable. The Allow Negative Inventory option indicates that this location directive action is allowing negative inventory. You should be careful when you enable this option, as when this option is enabled, then the negative inventory is possible for the items and locations that are allowing negative inventory. When this option is enabled, then the edit query will be changed. So here you can see the condition of physical inventory greater than 0 has been removed to allow the negative inventory. The batch enabled option indicates that this location directive action can handle batch controlled items. So if you have batch enabled items, then it's ideally and recommended to create new location directive action that can handle these items. So I'll click new and then I'll create new location directive action for the batch enabled items. Then I'll enable this option, batch enabled. After that, I'll move this to up. So right now we have two location directive actions. The first one that will handle the non-batch controlled items, and the second one that can handle the batch controlled items. After you define the location directive actions, you can enhance the direction action by one of the following predefined strategies. Now let's review the available strategies with some scenarios. So for example, in sales order process and for the location directive actions that handle batch controlled items, you can select FIFO batch reservation to apply the strategy of first expire, first out. So the location directive action that has this strategy, it will direct the users to pick from the locations that have the batches that will expire first. In purchase order process, you can select consolidate to direct the users to put the items in a specific location when similar items are already exist. Or you can select empty location with no incoming work to locate the items in empty locations. The location is considered as empty if it has no physical inventory and no expected incoming work. For replenishment process, you can use round up to full LB strategy. This strategy is used to round up the inventory quantity is being allocated to match the license plate quantity that should be picked. Or you can combine between the FIFO batch reservation and the round up to full license plate strategies by selecting round up to full license plate and FIFO batch strategy. For the transfer order process, you can select license plate guided strategy where you can create picking work that hold the requested license plate. Last but not least, you can select match packing quantity to direct the users to a pick location that has the specified packing quantity. When you release the orders to the warehouse, like the sales, transfer, and production orders, or maybe while receiving the items in the purchase order receiving process, the location directive might fail to allocate the lines to the expected pick and put locations. In that case, you can decide whether the work should be created without the locations or to stop the work creation. You can manage and configure this point through the location directive failures. So in the location directive failures, you can determine for different work order types if the work creation is possible in case of the location directive failures. In general, when the work creation fails, you may go back to the work creation history log as you may figure out where exactly the issue or which location directive rule has been failed. From my experience, I see there are common reasons for the location directive failures across the work order types. The first one is the multiple SKU. You can use the multiple SKU option to specify if this location directive rule can handle multiple items or just only one single item. So if you will have different items per sales orders, and sometimes you will have only one item per order, so ideally you should define two location directive rules. One that has multiple SKU disabled to handle the single items, and another one that has multiple SKU enabled to handle the multiple items. Definitely, if you don't have one of these two location directive rules and you have both scenarios, single and multiple items per sales order, then potentially you will get some works that have been created without both locations. The second reason is the quantity range and the restricted units that's specified here in the line section. So in case of the order quantity is out of this range or doesn't match the restricted units, then the location directive will fail unless you define another sequence or range to process different quantity range and multiple unit of measures. The third reason is also here in the line section, which is the allow split option. The allow split option determines whether the location directive can split the quantity that is being received or picked across multiple warehouse locations, or whether this quantity must be located or picked from a single location to create the work. So when this option is disabled and the required quantity cannot be fulfilled from a single location, then the location directive will fail to specify the pick location. The reason number 4 is the batch enabled option that determines if this location directive action can handle batch controlled items or no. So if you have mixed items in terms of whether the batch control is enabled or no, so to avoid the location directive failures, then you should have two location directive actions. One where the batch enabled option is disabled to handle the non-batch controlled items, and the second one that has batch enabled option is enabled to handle the batch control items. And now let's see how to manage and configure the location directive failures. So you can configure the location directive failures in two ways. The first one, by navigating to warehouse management module, setup, work, then location directive failures. And this is the exact same form that located in warehouse management parameters, location directive failures. So in order to define and manage location directive failures for a specific work order type, click new, and then select the work order type. So I'll select here, for example, sales orders, and then stop work on location directive failure. I set this to yes. So this will ensure that the sales order work will not be created in case of the location directive failed. Now let's recap what we discussed in the session. So this session was about the location directive. So first, we reviewed how to define the location directives and managing the quantity range of each location directive line, and then how to link the location directive lines to location directive actions. Then we discussed the available strategies of the location directive actions, and at the end, we reviewed the potential reasons of the location directive failures and how to control the location directive failures. Thank you for watching and your time. Stay tuned for the next lesson. Feel free to reach out if I can help. Take care and good luck.